Hello everyone! Welcome to TERF Wars, Season 3, Episode something or other. I can't remember the number. 15, 16? I have no idea. Sorry, I've had a little bit of tech issues. I had a little bit of editing issues. Also, I've just had a mad week. And anyway, that's why I am a couple of minutes late. But hopefully you all had a fun chat in the chat. Yeah, I hope everyone's doing good. We have had a good week this week in the world of particularly British trans rights, but maybe it's given some inspiration to the whole world. So we will see. But yeah, so this week we've got some news. We've got some good news. We've got some other things to discuss. We've got a decent amount of brain rot, so I think this should be a fun week. So anyway, for anyone who was wondering, this is TERF Wars, which is the show where we go through the last week's worth of transphobic, gender critical, TERF nonsense, and we look at the arguments, we look at what's going on, we discuss it, we debunk it, we laugh at it together, and then we move on. It's a way of getting it out of our system, so we're ready for the next week's worth of bullshit. Hooray! Because it is never ending. One of the things I always say about this show is I go through and censor most of the people. The whole point in this is to deal with the ideas so that next time we encounter the ideas, they just bounce off and they're just nonsense. Or so we know how to debunk them ourselves, or just so we understand what's going on. The point isn't to harass people or pile on or anything like that. So please do not do that. Don't look at these people up. Some of the people I haven't censored because they're celebrities, big organisations, or just relevant voices in the world of gender critical, which I always cringe with some of these people because some of them just are relevant voices in the world of gender critical, but some of them borderline. And I feel like by me saying they're relevant voices, they probably get a big ego boost, but sometimes it's relevant who they are. And in that case, still do not go up and look them up and pile on or anything. That's not the point in this. But it's sometimes important to know where these ideas come from. So let's get into it. So for the first piece of just nice news, I just thought I'd cover before getting into the main bit of good news, so this is Nikki Tutorials, and she is a trans woman, and she's like mega celebrity. She is like a makeup blogger, and if you like anything like that, then you should definitely go check her out on YouTube. She has like 2 million followers on Twitter, so I have no idea how many she's got on YouTube. Lots. I do subscribe, but I don't watch that much makeup stuff anymore. But anyway, she's just really nice, really great. And she went to the Met Gala, which is one of these American celebrity events where celebrities turn up and have their photo taken on the way in, and they wear like fancy costumes, and like Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez wore some dress that said tax the rich on it, and then there's been a big argument about it. And you know, it's one of those things where some people turn up to look really good, some people turn up to make an art statement, some people turn up to make a political statement. But here is Nikki Tutorials commenting about how she got invited and what she wore and why. So she says, "Pay it no mind, trans flag. When I got asked to join the Met Gala, 5 exclamation marks. I think she's quite excited by that. I knew I wanted to pay homage to a trans icon who was at the forefront of the Stonewall riots. Marsha P. Johnson paved the way for so many of us, and I hope I made my community proud. #Met Gala." And then we can just have a little zoom in. So here is her outfit. I think she looks pretty mega. Like the whole thing's pretty cool. But why it's interesting and what she's gone for here is this is like a famous photo of Marsha P. Johnson, who she mentioned is like, I guess, some kind of cultural icon for trans people. She was involved in the original Stonewall riots, which if you don't know what they are, it's worth looking up. They were like an important step in LGBT liberation in, like civil rights times in recent times. And she was, has become an inspirational person because of that. And this is a very famous photo of her with the flowers and all this kind of stuff. And so Nikki's gone for like the same flower headband idea and like the similar like off-shoulder dress, and just thought that was cool. That's a cool thing, like to like when have events that invite like mega celebrities, like Kim Kardashian I think went to this, like proper international mega celebrities, since when has that been inviting trans people? Like, I know, like, fuck off celebrities, fuck off rich people, blah blah blah, totally agree, but still it's just cool when this happens, I think, personally. So like cool, like on Nikki for, you know, she could have done anything here. She could have used this to really focus on her career or focus her attention on herself or anything, and she's focused attention on like a trans rights icon, an LGBT rights icon, because Stonewall, you know, was an important event for all of us. So I just think that's cool. And also, like, I don't know if you can see, but I like based my makeup on her makeup this evening, so I hope it looks as good as hers does. I mean, she's a pro, so. But then she also says, the morning of the Met Gala, I wanted to lay flowers and pay my respects to Marsha. This was the place she was found. So I hope I made you proud. So, like, lots of love to Marsha and lots of love to Nikki for doing that. I think that's really, like, to just make people aware. Most people just have no fucking idea about this stuff. So it's cool seeing a mega celebrity making people aware of this. Cool. So that's one bit of good news. So that's like heartwarming good news. Now the next bit is like, fuck yeah, good news. So the next bit is, and this is like the best bit of news I've had in a long time, which may be a bit of sad, but the last year in the UK, there was a ruling which decided that trans healthcare for trans kids was effectively just banned. So it made it so that you couldn't get any healthcare as a trans kid unless you got a court order, and no one has ever even attempted to get a court order before, so it just wasn't going to happen. Like, that's just not a thing that happens. And it got overturned. Massive shout out to everyone involved in getting this overturned. So that's like Good Law Project, Gender Intelligence, Endocrinologist Society. There was quite a few people. If you want to find out, absolutely crabs in chat, by the way. This is some crab raves times. So if you want to read like a summary of what this is from one of the groups involved, I've put the link down below. From Gender Intelligence, they've got like a short summary one, they've got a long read one, and then they also link the full judgment, which you can read yourself if you have like a law brain. This wasn't just like a little technicality win. In fact, it was kind of the opposite. It was kind of like, how the hell did they win last time? Total slam dunk reversal. They even said in the ruling that they don't think the original case should have even been heard. So that's very strong. Basically, the step after this would be to take it to the Supreme Court, which the like the anti-trans crew have said they want to do. And that's possible, but the Supreme Court don't hear every single case that, you know, gets taken to that stage. You request for the Supreme Court to hear you, and only like a third of them even get a chance to be seen. And if the lower court has said the original ruling shouldn't have even been heard in the first court, that's going to look really bad for them trying to take it to the Supreme Court. It's unlikely they'll be able to take it to the Supreme Court. And one of the important things to note about this case is they weren't allowed to bring any new evidence to it. I don't know why law's the way it is, but like in the original case, that it was just a total mess. The defendants, which is the Tavistock and Portman clinic, which deals with all trans healthcare for kids in the UK, they like did a terrible job. Somehow Transgender Trend were allowed to give evidence, although they like not remotely experts or anything. Total mess. If this did go to the next court, then there would be much more chance to, you know, prepare a good actual good case. I think that they were surprised that everyone was surprised that the original case went the way it did because it was such a fucking joke, and now it's gone the other way. So this is incredible news. I've talked to quite a lot of families of trans kids and in the UK who are like directly affected by this, and like everyone's just overjoyed, lots of crying going on. I think it's just such a big deal. Like if this is you and you're a kid, or if this is your child, like this is your whole world. Having your healthcare just turns your whole life upside down, and it's just given that chance again. So this is just brilliant news. It isn't all like, this isn't like we can stop now. Like, in fact, this is kind of, we're back to step one. There's still horrific waiting lists in this country. There's still a completely ridiculous system which isn't up to international standards. The whole thing's bullshit, and this is where, like, we're back to the zero line, and now we need to start pushing again. But the important thing is this is like the step that we can stand on. So I think it's totally cool to just do nothing this week. Just celebrate this. When you get some dickhead in your mentions, just post an article about them getting wrecked in court, and then just mute them and have a smile to yourself, because this is a big deal and it's made people's lives better. And then next week, once you're recovered, get back on it, and we can start fighting for some actual real practical access to healthcare for kids. So obviously there were some gender critical reactions to this. Though, interestingly, and lots of people pointed this out, I noticed this myself, but I saw quite a few people pointing this out. There wasn't much gender critical reaction to this. Like, they've had a bigger reaction. They had a bigger reaction when that lady got blocked by the juice company. Like, they've had bigger reactions to a lot of things. This just kind of happened. And perhaps we'll go into that in a minute, why I think that is. But here's some of the reactions. So this is one of these borderline people. I didn't... oh, I've still got a cough. I didn't really want to give him the ego boost, but it's kind of relevant. We vaguely mentioned him last week. Writes for Gay and Lesbian News, which is like the LGB Alliance publication. He says, a narrow technical win on the question of the power of the divisional court. Chin up, people, all still to play for. What? This wasn't a narrow technical win. This was like, the original ruling shouldn't have happened. This is a weird way to try and spin it. Didn't really get much interaction. I think he's like the legal commentator for Gay and Lesbian News. So I don't know. He did write an article on it. Maybe you can go and read his article, but it's very weird that he tried to spin it like that. I don't know. Just look. Actually, let's just cover a couple more reactions. So here he is, so we did do a post about it saying, gay kids being rushed to gender-affirming clinics by Rainbow Borg. That's us, guys. Rainbow Borg is any LGBT person, any gender non-conforming person, any LGBT ally who is also just like standard gender conforming, whatever. We're all the Rainbow Borg. If you're trans Taliban and Rainbow Borg and SJWs and all this kind of nonsense, just whatever stupid slur they can come up with. Fox murdering tax. This guy writes with a certain style, and it's very tedious. But Fox murdering tax silks refers to the guy from Good Law Project who once killed a fox, and Twitter didn't like it. I think kind of reasonably. And homophobic hate group charities like Mermaids and Stonewall. So you can tell this guy is very rational. Don't worry, I'm coming for you. Me and my friends are going to save you. Hang in there. I mean, this is based around the whole argument where they're like, all trans kids are gay kids who are being forced into transition because of homophobia. I mean, there's no evidence for that. It's kind of all garbage. Homophobia is, there was a recent study actually that found most people would be happy with a gay or trans kid in the UK, which is good news. But a lot more would be unhappy with a trans kid than a gay kid, which, I mean, I just think everyone knows that. I think it's ridiculous that the gender criticals are trying to say it's the other way around. Like, I don't think anyone thinks that like there are homophobic parents who aren't transphobic out there. There's like, I mean, sure there is a couple in the world. I'm sure that has happened. And if we ever hear of cases of that, like from the kids or get some evidence of it, then yeah, it's immoral, it's disgusting. But they're trying to make it out as if that's the majority of them, and it's, I mean, quite probably none of them. So it's just a complete joke. But this, like, we're coming to save you thing, like the idea that there are these kids being like, oh, I really need saving, like, it's just nonsense. It's just worth taking in what the tone of these posts are. When the original ruling happened, banning trans healthcare for trans kids, it was crushing. I mean, you can go back and watch the episode when I discussed that. It was like the worst week. Totally broke me. Like, I had kind of had a breakdown from it. I know so many people who just spent all day crying about it, or longer. And, you know, some of these families like turn their whole lives upside down, you know, overnight kind of thing. There was just so much despair that I felt like the whole UK trans community and like the LGBT community and even like in other countries was just crushed by it, because it's just such a disgusting and disappointing original ruling. And there was just, you know, people were posting about it for weeks, and it just very clearly upset very deeply a lot of people. And they all just kind of seem to be like, oh, we'll fix it. Like, I don't know, it just doesn't, it's I just do not feel they're mirrors. This isn't two sides fighting for the same thing that has the same value to them. This is two sides fighting for something, but for one of them, it's because we know, like, the people on this side are the people who are parents of trans kids, maybe some trans kids themselves, people who used to be trans kids, and people who are now trans adults who know what it was like to not have the option and are living with having to deal with not having healthcare as a child for the rest of their lives. You know, this is so personal to lots of these people, you know, to me and to everyone involved. And we know that it's resulting in the suffering of children, and that is the motivation here. We want the best healthcare for these children. Whereas for lots of gender critical people, it's like an ideological point. It's like the original ruling was like a morale boosting political tool, and that was it. I mean, just seeing how disgustingly they were acting towards these children. Yeah, I mean, for example, I think what's obvious here is when someone like this says, what about all these gay kids who are being forced to be trans? I mean, well, firstly, I would say, well, there aren't any. But if there is a gay kid out there in the UK who has some abusive parents forcing them to be trans, that's horrific. That makes me, you know, that's terrible. And I would want that to stop. And I don't want anything to do with those people, and it's disgusting. Like, that's just as bad as taking healthcare away from trans kids. And I went and tried talking to gender critical people about this, and they did not give a flying fuck about the suffering they had caused, like, at all. Just there to gloat. Like, when you say, well, what about these kids who need the healthcare? You know, what you can say, oh, you're worried about some of them, but what about the ones who definitely are trans and who definitely need this healthcare? And they didn't care. And they were trying to report parents to social services who were asking if there was ways around the court ruling and all this kind of stuff. Like, it's just fucking disgusting. And this is just not a mirror. This is not a two sides. This is not a both sides thing. It's just a group of people who want to take healthcare away from kids because that's their like ideological position. Like that's just what they want. Trans is bad, therefore stop this. And kids is like a recruiting tool for them. That's what gets people hyped up. Oh, they're transing your kids. Oh, I hate trans people now. Whereas for us, it's so personal. And I just think that's why this has been the difference in the response. We've of course got some ridiculous responses. Here's my alien head award of the week. The Court of Appeal has placed the fate of vulnerable children back into the hands of ideologically captured doctors who believe a child can give informed consent to an experimental treatment that even they themselves don't understand the consequences of. Devastating. So what they're really saying here is the Court of Appeal has placed the fate or the healthcare of trans kids, who are vulnerable children in a lot of cases, back into the hands of doctors. Like, ideologically captured, what they mean is the medical establishment, the international experts, all of the people who make all the decisions about trans healthcare based on decades of evidence, they all think that trans healthcare is good. For some reason that experts in trans people think that trans healthcare is good. So that makes them ideologically captured. And this is a bit like one of these things where they're like, oh, sure, you just want to trust all the experts on vaccines? Well, no wonder you think vaccines are good. It's like, yeah, that's because they're experts. And that's why they're recommending the best thing. Just a self-ode, really. It's just embarrassing. I saw a couple of takes like this one. So, when under 16s go abroad to join terror organisations, they're too young to know what they're doing, apparently. But when they're apparently old enough to consent to taking life-changing drugs to change their identities. Oh, but they apparently are old enough to consent to taking life-changing drugs to change their identities. Welcome to 2021. Well, welcome to like 1990, where I think both of those things were still the case. But this is a really, really rubbish argument for a lot of reasons. But it's worth knowing what this guy's referring to. So he's referring to a teenage girl. I'm not sure what age she was when she left, but she is a British citizen. And she fled the country and married some person in Syria and joined the Islamic State. And then had a bad time and tried to come back to the UK. And the UK voted to ban her because she's a terrorist, but she's like a child. So it's become one of these partisan issues where generally reactionary people want to ban this child from the country because she joined a terrorist organisation, and left-wing or progressive people are saying she's a child, so shouldn't be treated like an adult, and if she comes back to the country, then that doesn't mean that she's just free to carry on as normal, but we shouldn't be treating her like a child. Anyway, shouldn't be treating her like an adult. So that's what this guy's referring to. But here's the difference. One of them is a medical treatment which is prescribed by doctors after expert consultation. And the other one is terrorism. It's just such a rubbish, they both just made a free choice, did they? So one kid who was groomed into thinking that some culty terrorist organization was good, made a free decision, and then a child is just making a free decision to take healthcare, even though they have to get prescribed it after months of consultation. It's just such a crap argument. It's just this superficial. I'm declaring both of these things are a choice, so we should just let kids make choices now, should we? We can make another comparison then, shall we? How about, are kids capable of consenting to drinking squash, and are kids capable of consenting to having a like brain operation? Like, oh, maybe they're just free choices, are they? Well, if we let one, then we have to let the other. Like, they're just totally different situations, mate. Fuck off. Ridiculous. And now this was interesting. So how the original case worked is it wasn't trying to say that the treatment doesn't work, because obviously that's a decision for the experts and doctors. So their angle of attack was to argue against this law which says when people can consent to medical treatment. So obviously adults can consent on behalf of themselves to medical treatment. I mean, most adults, unless they, you can get into a situation where you can't if you're perhaps disabled or it like maybe in a coma or something. You obviously can't consent to your own treatment. Sorry, just to be clear, obviously not all disabled people. There are some disabilities which might lead to that being the case. And then obviously like 2-year-olds can't consent to anything. But there's a grey area. We can't just say the day of your 18th birthday is when you can consent to medical treatment, and the day before your 18th birthday, your parents make all the decisions, because there are some treatments where that doesn't want to be the case. So we have this like grey area law in the UK called Gillick competence, which originally was about teenage girls being able to access contraception without their parents' permission. So that would be, like 15, 16, 17-year-old girls being able to go to the doctors and say, I want contraception, like the pill. And then the doctor could explain what it does, explain the risks, and then using the doctor's own judgment, decide whether this child understands and whether they're like mature enough. And if that's the case, then they can consent on behalf of themselves with the help of the doctor. So that's how they used, so that's like the law that applies to all different kinds of medical treatments. And importantly, it applies to access to contraception, which is a big deal and absolutely something that under 18 should have, like unambiguously. And also applies for like rarer things like abortion, so reproductive freedom. If you're 16, 17-year-old girl and you're pregnant and you want an abortion and your parents don't want you to have one, or maybe you don't want them to know that you're pregnant, then you can consent using this law. And it applies to trans healthcare and a bunch of other stuff. And we all pointed out that attacking this law would weaken Gillick competence, and obviously that's bad for trans people. It's bad for a lot of people, but specifically the biggest group affected would be cis girls. So this is a very like anti-feminist move to attack specifically this law, because if they weaken this law, then it could set them up in a situation where someone could like sue doctors who helped a child get an abortion, or sue doctors who helped a child get contraception or something like that. And we pointed that out because that's what it was all about. And all the gender criticals were like, no, this has nothing to do with that. They're trying to lie to smear what we're trying to do and all this kind of stuff. But here we have Kira Bell's lawyer says, the Gillick competency test is no longer fit for purpose. We will be seeking permission to appeal to the Supreme Court. So this is a reporter here, and this was emailed to reporters. I couldn't find it in an article, but I'll link her tweet below, and she says her source there. The Gillick test came from a case ruling under 16s could access contraception without parental consent. So, Paul Conrath, senior consultant solicitor at Sinclair's Lair, said, "We are both dismayed and surprised at the Court of Appeal's decision, which appears to us the epitome of the triumph of legal formalism over justice and common sense." Yeah, pick the law over common sense. At a stroke, the court's decision removes a sensible, necessary and proportionate protection for vulnerable young children against poorly evidenced treatment with lifelong irreversible consequences, which is practiced by the GIDS service at the Tavistock. At the same time, the judgment demonstrates that the Gillick competency test is no longer fit for purpose. We will be seeking permission to appeal the Supreme Court. So, just for a bit of outline, This guy used to be, or is, I'm not sure, but definitely used to be part of Pro-Life Alliance. He's like straight up anti-abortion. He's helped with lots of anti-abortion cases before, including one which I didn't get time to cover here properly, but including one where some parents were like trying to stop their daughter from having an abortion because she was 16 and got pregnant and didn't want to have a baby at 16, and her parents said that she couldn't do that, and he helped their case to try and like soothe people involved. They lost. She was able to have an abortion. And there was another case he was involved in where I guess I'm not actually sure what age the person was, but a lady wanted to have an abortion and the husband didn't, and he tried to sue her, or the boyfriend or whoever it was, the father tried to sue her to stop her from having an abortion, and this guy represented her, and then she had the abortion and it was fine, and then he tried to sue her so that he could bury the remains of the abortion. Like, this guy is anti-abortion and he's openly gunning for a law which protects contraception and abortion, on like funded by the gender criticals. Like, this is just openly what's happening. And another thing to point out what this covers, and what this case recently has been used for, is in the COVID situation. And we have a load of fuss over here in the UK, which you probably have in your country too, that they want to vaccinate kids because that's good for kids, and it's good for everyone. And of course, all the anti-vaxxers are in a rage, and they were trying to use this because kids can get vaccines without their parents' consent if they understand what's going on, and they use the Gillick competency. So the anti-vaxxers want to get rid of this too. So there's like 3 forces at work at the moment, major ones, pushing against Gillick competency. One is the anti-trans crew, the gender criticals. One is the anti-abortion crew, the pro-lifers. And one is the anti-vax crew, who are the Save Our Kids crew. I can't remember what they call themselves. This is just happening in front of us. This is what they're trying to do, and the gender criticals are really keen for us not to link these things together. I mean, there's no link. There's no linking. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's a fucking anti-abortion lawyer who is part of Pro-Life Alliance who's gunning for Gillick competency. It's fucking obvious, and they're still trying to deny it. Like, such a joke. Do not let this slip under the radar. Anyone brings this case up, point this out. It's important, and people need to know it. And especially when they're trying to pretend to be feminists, like to the media and all this kind of garbage. Ridiculous. So now let's hear from a relevant gender critical voice, Posey Parker, and what she has to say on this little aspect here.
So I'm particularly unhappy about that ruling. However, there are other routes to win this. So my idea from now on is that maybe we need to repeal Gillick, or we need to re-examine. Bobby Dragon 199 says we stand with Kira Bell. We absolutely do. Thank you very much for your 199. So that's what's happening. I just think Gillick is a law that was made for a really good reason. It was to stop pregnancy. So it was to stop quite a catastrophic, massive thing. Bringing another life into the world is not something that should have ever been allowed to be used anywhere else at all. And maybe it was the first step in dividing children from their families. I don't know. I don't know actually if all said and done, whether it's really a good thing. I don't know whose benefit, what other people have benefited from Gillick, but I'm just not comfortable with it. I think it really has been used badly here. Maybe it was always going to. Maybe that was maybe, you know, the thin end of the wedge. There's always a thin end of the wedge. There's always an unintended consequence. Maybe this is that we have decided that children really can consent. And I don't think they can. And I think actually we need to find other ways to stop teenage pregnancy.
No sound. Cock. Oh! Well, you heard what Posey had to say. What I was saying was, there's a couple of things here to discuss about what she said. One of them is that it was funny that she had to stop halfway through to thank someone for a $1.99 donation. The other thing is that she just straight out come out with it. She thinks that the gender criticals should go for, like, attack Gillick competence. And she's right. That is the only way that they're going to be able to stop trans healthcare. I mean, they could also do it with, like, evidence, but that's not going to happen. So they're going to have to attack the law of Gillick competence. And then that's going to affect all these other people who were just talking about children who want vaccines, children who want reproductive freedom. And I was just highlighting in silence, so none of you could hear me, how reproductive freedom is like the main oppressive force of the patriarchy. It's the main thing. Taking away, targeting women's reproductive freedom is one of the like main focuses of it. And obviously that does then affect trans men and some non-binary people too. But like the goal of it, the reason why all these people are targeting anti-abortion is to oppress women. So having access to reproductive freedom as a young person is just essential. Anyway, I'm glad you can all hear me again. Moving on. This guy, I don't know if he counts as a relevant gender critical voice. So he's the founder or leader or whatever of Our Duty Group, which is one of these anti-trans groups who is given a bigger platform than they should just because they're anti-trans, and it's in the UK and all of them get these ridiculous platforms. He just constantly uses like violent language. I mean, as we're about to see here and as before, here he is saying, I first wrote to the Tavistock GIDS in the spring of 2018. I've just reread my letter. I'm now going after the addresses. They were told, they ignored, they harmed, guilty of grievous bodily harm with intent or conspiracy. Then lists some of the doctors that works there by name, saying he wants their addresses. All of the above should be in prison serving life sentences. We shall see if the legal system in the UK works. Well, it's good that he clarified that they should be in prison, but before he said that they should have their heads on spikes outside the court or something. Like, this is a grim person. And the reason he's like this is because he has a adult trans son who, God, imagine having this as your dad, fucking hell. And he's just in a rage about it and just wants to ruin his child's life as a way of getting them to stop being trans. You know, all the standard gender critical stuff, campaigning against just trans rights. If you've got a trans kid and you're campaigning against trans rights, you are directly just straight up campaigning to ruin their life. I mean, what else is there? If they don't have rights, then what life can they have? Ridiculous. Shit person. Just like seeing some of these kind of threats is kind of the other stage. Some of them will go after attacking Gillick competence. Some of them will just move on to something else because they just want morale wins and they don't care about anything. And some of them will do this kind of stuff. This is just a fucking joke because she makes the own counter argument to her position in her thing. The reason that kids are banned from tobacco and alcohol is because it demonstrably does harm to them and does not make their lives better. They aren't medicines. They aren't something that doctors prescribe. They aren't something we have decades of evidence showing that if we gave them to kids, it makes their life better. In fact, we have a lot of evidence showing the opposite for both. Unlike trans healthcare. Like, the reason you can hear me now, right? I'm getting a load of mutes again. Oh. I think you can hear me now. I can see the bars going up and down on the sound thing. I think that like it's just such a rubbish argument. Like, it's just plain to see that one of these situations is we've done a load of research and we found out this is harmful, and the other situation is we've done a load of research and found out this is good. And they're trying to compare the two, and it's just the crappiest argument. Like, it just, and like, because of an ideology. Yeah, the ideology is called medical science, and it's what we do in order to try and make people's lives better. And that's how we found out that alcohol and tobacco are dangerous and harm children. Anyway, like, I hadn't talked to her before in DM, but we definitely talked in tweets before. And I was drunk and I sent, "Mate, what are you doing? This is so ignorant." I could have sent a better message. She blocked me straight away. But I saw her interacting with other people and other people sending a range of different messages. From, you know, fuck off to like, "Oh, Sophie, we should have a discussion. Let's talk about this because you're wrong." And she wasn't going to listen to any of them. Like, once you get into this state, once you get into this position of like gender criticalness, where you think it makes sense to compare like medicine to cigarettes. Like, you're not going to listen to anyone. You're beyond it. And so I woke up the next day being like, oh, I should have tried harder, but nothing's going to change her mind. So I think that's showing resistance to people is sometimes all you can do. And that is polite disagreement, and it's true. And she probably doesn't remember me at all, but if she does, I'm glad she knows that I think that her statement was ignorant. This is one of my favourite moments of the week. So, Jane Clare Jones, who is a PhD philosopher, went on GB News, which is like attempting to be the British Fox News, and talked to this guy and said, I'm a radical left-wing feminist and I'm constantly being called a Nazi. Oh, Jane, what a cell phone. Andrew speaks to feminist Dr. Jane Clare Jones about Judith Butler's comments on gender-critical feminists. So a while ago, Judith Butler rightly pointed out that gender-critical is not the enemy of fascism, because it's not, because they have no disagreements about trans rights, and gender-critical is single-issue trans rights. So that's right. Judith Butler is correct. Jane was obviously angry at that and decided to go on very respectable British Fox News crap channel, which is struggling, and had their like main anchor just quit after like no time at all. I'm constantly being called a Nazi. Maybe it's time to reconsider your position if you're like constantly being called a Nazi. Maybe you're not a radical left-wing feminist after all, mate. Lol. Anyway, got a couple more Jane Clare Jones things. She comes out with some stuff, my goodness. And this is, brace your cringe receptors, because this is an overdose. Dr. Jane Clare Jones, gender-critical feminist who keeps getting called a Nazi. I have been studying this, trans rights, for nearly a decade, and I'm basically one of the leading experts in the world on the history and ideology of the trans rights movement, and know many trans people who agree with my analysis. So the ignorance line won't work, sorry. Mate, this is all the evidence of the ignorance that you have that we need. She genuinely thinks that she's a leading world expert on trans history. If you saw the XX Factor episode on Jennifer Bilek, you'll know that Krista pointed out that Jane Clare Jones is also in on the Martine Rothblatt invented trans rights in 2009. That's one of her things that she wrote in a report commissioned by the University of Oxford to the government, like wrote all this garbage about transhumanism and all this kind of stuff. Like we've covered before, when someone was like, what are you talking about? And she was like, oh, obviously I'm talking about Martine Rothblatt, the founder of your movement. You don't even know your own history. It's like, who? What? They've picked up on this weird little conspiracy and created their own gender critical world in which that's what trans rights is. And now she's the world expert. I mean, she's definitely the world expert on the gender critical and conspiracy idea of what trans rights are. Imagine claiming you're a world expert on something. Like, oh, many trans people agree with me. I can probably name the 10 trans people who agree with her. It's so embarrassing. Oh, so cringe, my goodness. And just to go for a trilogy dose today. So Angela Rayner is a Labour person who was trying to be leader for Labour for a while, and maybe still is, I don't know. but she's generally pro-trans. She said, everyone should be able to be themselves and be celebrated, supported, loved for who they are. Equalities ministers should not be in the job if they don't believe that. So this is a conservative equality minister who said a load of nonsense about gay marriage and trans rights and a few other things, and should resign. And there was some article which came out about them recently. Probably should have linked that here. Anyway, here's Jane Clare Jones responding to it. Everyone should be able to be themselves. Cool. I'm on board so far. The question is whether they should be able to be other groups of people. I don't think a person can be a group of people, but for example, maybe I think a French person should be able to become a British person. Anyway, trans women being women would be trans women being what they actually are. That would be being themselves. Claiming that you're a member of a group that has already people in it who are not you is not being yourself. It's colonization. 700 likes. Me being myself is me being you, but you are not actually me. So I'm going to need you to erase everything about yourself that makes you different from me so I can be you, okay? This is an argument against... This is an argument against, like, trans women are women, trans men are men. I feel like self-evidently rubbish, but we'll go for it anyway, just in case she watches. Shout out to Jane if she ever does. Trans women being trans women would be trans women being what they actually are. Yes, it would. A equals A. I'm with you on board. I'm on board with you on that. Doctor of Philosophy. A does equal A. When I am a trans woman, I am being a trans woman, and that is me being what I am. A bit like when I am someone wearing 4 earrings, I am being someone who is wearing 4 earrings. 2 of them are little spiders. Anyway, so that was kind of a nonsense claim, but that's building up to claiming you're a member of a group that there's already people in it who are not you is being yourself, isn't not being yourself. But that's kind of, I mean, I know what she's trying to say. What she's trying to say is, if a trans woman says they're a woman, then that's not being yourself. And that's kind of garbage. I mean, it's wrong. Trans women saying they're a cis woman would be them not being themselves, because trans women aren't cis women. But the claim is that trans women and cis women are both types of women. But what she said here, literally, claiming that you're a member of a group that already has people in it who are not you. I mean, that's like everything. Like when I say I'm a metalhead, that's me saying I'm a member of a group. Metalheads that already has people in it are the metalheads who are not me. And when I say, like, I'm a female metalhead, or I'm a British metalhead, or I'm a dickhead metalhead, then, like, these are subsets of them. And when I say I'm a British metalhead, that is me being myself. That is me being a British metalhead, because a British metalhead is what I am. And I'm claiming to be a member of 2 groups there, British and metalhead. And in each case, I am then a subset based on that other thing. And it's not colonization. It's me being part of those groups. Like, I wasn't a metalhead at one point, and now I am. I've always been British, but maybe I won't be in the future. Who knows? To change groups isn't colonization. That's just like how groups work for lots of stuff. Like, there's no argument here that's actually really... Like, if you apply these arguments generally, like they're being proposed, they just don't stand up at all. And then just, like, some clarification here. I don't know, why has she written this generally when generally it doesn't work? Like, why not just write this very specifically about trans women claiming that they are members of the group women that already has people in it, cis women, is not you being yourself. But it is. And even if you don't accept even if you say trans women are men, and you start here and you just say men claiming that they're a member of the group women that already has people in it, women, is not you being you. But then, yes, that's because men are not part of the group women. So the argument is literally just men are not part of the group women. So, I mean, you've tried to generalize, I don't think trans women are women. And in doing so, you've kind of made a nonsense argument that doesn't stand up on its own. And the only way you can make it make sense is to just retreat back to the premise, trans women are not women. So it's kind of rubbish. But then this little expansion here, I'm going to need you to raise everything about yourself that makes you different. What are you talking about? I don't want you don't need to change at all, Jane. You just need to stop. Well, I mean, it'd be good if you were better at making logical arguments. And it'd be good if you stop trying to take away my rights. Other than that, you can do what you want. I mean, we're different. We're different people for a lot of reasons. We're in the same groups. We're both British people, I think. But, I mean, we're still different British people. What are you talking about? There are differences between trans women and cis women. No one's saying trans women are cis women. That's not a trans rights claim. That's why the hashtag isn't trans women are cis women. Because that would make no fucking sense. It's trans women are women because we're saying, oh, it's just so obvious. My goodness, just address the actual argument. Ugh. You don't have to change anything about yourself. You don't have to raise anything. I don't want to be you. I am me. Next. Oh, that's fucking bellend. Right. So this guy is pushing to be leader of the Green Party. It would be very bad if he was. So here he is saying, okay, sensitive topic, but needs airing. Here's part of a form used by libraries as registration for 2021 Reading Challenge, Summer Reading Challenge for kids aged 4 to 11. Great initiative. But why are kids being asked, how would you describe yourself, optional, and excluding sex data? So if we just look at the question, I've no idea why he's got the whole form and crossed a bit of it out. You could have just highlighted it or just cropped it or... Anyway, how would you describe yourself, optional, boy, girl, prefer not to say? This is, again, a children's summer reading challenge for a local library. And he wants to collect sex data. Collecting data you don't need is actually against the Data Protection Act. If you want to, I'm just trying to think of an example. I mean, if you want to open a bank account and they start asking you what your shoe size is, what your blood type is, what your parents' 5 last addresses were and stuff. That is data they don't need, and it's dangerous for them to have it, and it's pointless, and it's against the law for them to collect it. They're only allowed to collect data that's relevant. So you don't need people's birth genitals recorded on a form to take out a book for summer as a child. What are you talking about? All this is getting offended about the wording of the question, which, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they hadn't even changed this. Prefer not to say should always be an option on this kind of thing. Nothing to do with trans people. If you don't want to say, another way, I can totally see them being offended by this because that lets you write non-binary or all kinds of things that offend them in there. Fuck off. I hope some kid does write fuck off. But it's just ridiculous. This is obviously just to help the library, address the kids or understand what's going on. It's not some grand data collection or which genitals of children are taking out which books. It's just ridiculous. This is so dumb. Just fuck off. You don't need to know the genital of a child for them to take out a book from a library. And just imagine if they got their way and they enforced it, so you had to tell them your genitals in order to get out a book, and then you wanted to go and take out a book on trans rights or like human biology or something. Just like, how insulting would that be? Ugh. Ugh. So, Graham Linehan of the week. Graham Linehan, here is feminist Laurie Penny talking about a message they've received from Graham Linehan. Graham Linehan, free speech champion, has threatened me with legal action unless I delete a tweet and apologise. Here's the apology. I apologise for calling Graham Linehan a vile bigot. Never having met him, I have no idea if he's vile, and it was wrong of me to say so. I further apologise for suggesting that no publishing company should help Linehan publish his hate speech. It was wrong of me to single him out that way. No publishing company should help anyone publish any hate speech. The original tweet is now deleted. I hope this satisfies. So, I mean, this is a fucking joke from the top. Laurie shouldn't have deleted the tweet. We got a little sneaky dig in here, but I mean, he's a vile person. I think that's plain. You don't need to have met him to see that. Imagine trying to sue someone over them saying, like, when you say someone is vile, that's not like some factual claim to like the value of vileness. Like, oh, actually, vile is a protected characteristic and you can only claim to be it if you pass an exam. Like, what are you talking about? It means I think you're a dickhead. Like, would you, if I would say, I do not like Graham Linehan, like, oh, I'm going to sue you because your opinion is wrong. Like, what's fucking wrong with you? It's ridiculous. So embarrassing. But it gets more embarrassing. It's like so pathetic. He replied on his blog that people pay for. No, I'm sorry, this does not satisfy. I want Laurie Penny to explain under oath why they think they have the right to speak to people like this. I would like to see that too, actually, Graham. I would quite like to see Laurie Penny explain under oath why they think people have the right to call other people vile. But then, this is next level pathetic. I mean, this is pretty good going on pathetic standards for Graham. I've blurred the defamatory remarks they chose to repeat and re-emphasize in their apology. And he has actually blurred out the word vile. Vile! He's been calling trans people paedophiles and groomers and all kinds of nonsense and suggesting that the doctors who help trans kids are Nazis and like misgendering people and calling lesbians traitors to women because they're not transphobic enough and doing all kinds of disgusting things for years. Like the things that he said about other people, if they were said to him, they're like 100 times worse than be called vile. Vile's like, I don't know, it's just like such a vanilla insult. What are you talking about? I get called things 100 times more disgusting than this every single fucking hour on Twitter. And I'm not saying like, oh, I'm super tough and stuff. Like, vile? If someone calls me vile, it's like they just said they don't like me. I mean, in what world would you have to blur that out on your own blog? Like, when I post all these disgusting things people write about me on Twitter, I blur out their names and faces so that they don't get a pile-on, and he has to keep the name and face and blur out the insults. This is so pathetic. My goodness. What are you doing? That's next level. Just imagine having to blur out the word vile on your own blog because someone said it about you. God. So, I might just quickly cover the other one first. There was, like, Penny mentioned about this, and loads of people are like, oh, destroy her, Graham. And then capitalising the word her, just because they know that they don't use her as she, her as a pronoun. Just this is a man, of course, like taking the joy at destroying someone they think is a woman. Pathetic. And then here's someone, so many layers of cringe in this tweet. I've not seen him falsely accuse anyone. So you're just standing by the fact that Professor Grace Laverly is a groomer, are you? I mean, that was a very trivially a false accusation. He's accused like tens, maybe even hundreds of random trans people of being groomers with absolutely no evidence at all. He accused me of being a failed thrash metal guitarist. Mate, I'm shred. What are you talking about? No, anyway, I've seen him theorize, which is perfectly acceptable to me. Oh, I see you're not accusing someone. He's not accusing all of these like professors at universities of being child groomers. He's theorizing that they might be. See, well, because Laurie wasn't calling him vile. They were just theorizing that he's vile. Ridiculous. But anyway, regarding dead naming and misgendering, that is up to the individual to decide. Yes, it is. And if you decide to dead name or misgender someone, then you're a prick. Then, absolute zinger here, some real top tier gender critical logic. You misgender yourself every time you say my and not are, by the way, seeing as you favour they, them. No, because you absolute, like, pineapple. When someone uses they, them, they're not saying, I am more than one person. They're saying, use gender neutral pronoun. My is a gender neutral pronoun. It's a singular they, them. Just, all their arguments are so ridiculously dumb. 81 likes! 81 people came along and were like, yes, actually, they, them people should say, are we, when they're talking about, instead of, when they're talking about themselves instead of my and me. I don't know. Ridiculous people. So I wanted to highlight this just because of the size of the gender critical pile-on that happened here. So here is Nicola Sperling, who is Canadian, trans woman, and she's cool and you should follow her. I think she's doing a politics in some way. Can't remember. I'm really sorry, Nicola. She once got threatened by J.K. Rowling for saying something about J.K. Rowling's stance on trans kids. So this person's like, do you want to be a woman? And she says, I don't want to be, nor not want to be a woman. That's just what I am. And then this person says, but you reject the female sex. Now, this is in the the context of talking about sexuality. So Nicola says, and I'm going to highlight why I think this got a pile-on. Nicola says, I reject the idea that a person's sex assigned at birth is an observable trait which factors into attraction. Now, literally, this is true. What your birth sex is, isn't something that people can see. They can see a lot of factors about you today, and they can quite accurately guess because 99% of people are cis, and 99% of cis people look like, well, they set the stereotypes, they set the standards. That's what society views as what people grow up into. And also that's just kind of how sexual dimorphism works. You can pretty accurately guess someone's birth sex, like 99 times out of 100. But that's because most people are cis people. When you get to trans people, suddenly that rate goes way down because lots of trans people pass as not their birth sex. So it's just true that birth sex is not an observable trait. It's not something you can actually see. Like birth sex itself is not something you can see. You can see sexual characteristics, and some of those can change over time. But this got a big pile-on from the gender criticals, and the reason is there's two factors here. One is that they are constantly, desperately trying to find examples of like bigger trans people, like Nicola, who are saying that like sexuality doesn't exist. And that isn't a mainstream trans position. And the reason they're desperate to find big trans people saying it is because none of us are saying it, because it's not something any of us think. But they will go out of their way to twist absolutely anything, even vaguely related to that, into that, because that's what they want. It's part of their propaganda. They want to say trans people are all homophobic, because then they can split up LGBT people. But it's also, the reason this happened is because of I think the reason why it's phrased, and I'm not blaming Nicola here at all. I think this is just a way that some people talk, and unless you're ready to deal with the gender critical spin machine, unless you've experienced this and seen this in action, as soon as I saw this, I was like, this is going to get ratioed. I think it was already in the process of getting ratioed at the time. And the reason is because part of their premise is sex assigned at birth is your sex all the time. So when they read this, they see, I reject the idea that a person's sex is an observed trait which factors into physical attraction. And if you said sex was chromosomes, like a lot of them do, or sex is gametes, then that is still literally true, because you can't see sex if sex is chromosomes, because you can't see chromosomes. And you can't see sex if sex is gametes, because you can't see gametes. But on top of that, when they say it's an observable trait, they have this blind belief that your sex is a trait that you can somehow always sense. So they have this like, we can always tell thing going on top. So in that case, this reads as, I reject the idea that a person's sex factors into physical attraction. And that is what they want to like spin. That is what they want to show people and say, see, trans people are saying that whether it's a man or a woman or not shouldn't factor into your attraction of them. That's what they want to say. And that isn't at all what Nicola said here, even in slightly, at all. But it gives them some spin. And actually, I think that if this was like showed to you as a screenshot and they're like, oh, trans people being homophobic, look, here's someone saying that you shouldn't be attracted to whether someone's a man or a woman. At a glance, you might be like, oh, okay. But if you actually stopped and thought about it, you'd be like, oh, actually, that's not what she's saying at all. And actually what she's saying is just obviously true, because you can't see people's birth sex. But in a world where you don't really understand about trans people and you're being sold this bullshit already, they want to hype this up. So that's kind of why this has happened. And I think it's fine if you want to deal with this. Nicola did a very good job of handling this bullshit. Like 300 replies is quite a lot to get about one tweet. That's fine. If you want to just say something that is technically true and deal with the fallout, that's fine. But it is worth being aware what kind of thing generates a pile-on and what kind of stuff you can say the exact same points without them having so much room to twist it. And like, I'm not victim blaming here. Like, it's not your fault if you're not aware of this bullshit. But I did reply with my feedback. And I guess this is kind of like unwanted feedback, so it's a bit of an odd thing to do, but I kind of I know that other people are seeing this happening, and I wanted other people to see why, understand why. So I said, the reason they're piling on here is because with this wording, there is room for their intentional misrepresentation. I'd say no one is attracted to chromosomes, gametes, or what genitals you had as a baby. That is the same point that Nicola is making. When gender criticals talk about sex, they are talking about one of those three things, or gamete potential, which is something they've made up which doesn't exist. And that isn't what people are attracted to. I mean, just plainly, no one's attracted to those three things. But there's less room for bad faith. I mean, there's always room for gender critical bad faith. But they definitely struggle to twist this one a lot more. Got some dumb replies, of course. For example, this one. What about the rest of the animal kingdom? Are peacocks' tails merely a resource-intensive distraction? Do some orchids imitate the pheromones and other sexual characteristics of their pollinators just for the fun of it? Gender ideology is creationism for clueless unicorns? What? How is this a reply to anything I've said? What you talking about? 19 likes. What are you talking about? What about the rest of the animal kingdom? Yeah, no animals in the animal kingdom, as far as I'm aware, can sense chromosomes, actually, or gametes, or what genitals they had as a baby, though they usually have the same genitals, but not always. What are you talking about? Ridiculous. Pollinators, what are you talking about? Yeah, that was ridiculous. They're just like when they don't quite know how to reply to something, just flail off into some kind of nonsense, like brain malfunction. But yeah, I just think it's worth. It is like I know that lots of cis allies will approach the trans debate and be like, "Oh, I want to defend some trans people because I see them being snapped over all the time," and then you might say something like, "People aren't attracted to like a gender critical person will set you up. They'll be like, sex is gametes," and then you'll be like, "Well, if that's the case, then no one's attracted to sex." And then they'll be like, "You just said no one's attracted to sex. Trans allies are homophobe." When actually you're saying no one's attracted to gametes. So it's always just you just got to be ready for them to spin because that's all they're looking to do. So garbage. Bev Jackson, founder of LGB Alliance, says those criticizing LGB Alliance for admitting trans people fail to understand there's a clash of interests. Oh, let's hear about these clash of interests, Bev. For instance, so this is it. This is one of the reasons why LGB Alliance need to sign the WHRC declaration calling to blanket ban all trans women from all women's spaces, including toilets. Ban me from the toilets. Why is that, Bev? Why are you doing it? For instance, who has access to a lesbian dating site? What? If such a site is 40 to 50% males who identify as lesbians, who represents lesbians? Who objects to this? Answer LGB Alliance. Wait, did you make this ridiculous group that's campaigning to ruin my entire life because you want lesbian dating apps to have less trans women on them? I mean, some dating apps you can say whether you're a trans woman or not, and you can actually filter people by it and just filter them out. Or if they come up, you can just swipe no. 40 to 50%? What? I feel like you made that number up. I don't know if anyone has any stats. If anyone's found a lesbian dating app which is 50% trans women, I mean, that sounds like it's going to be probably turn into just one giant single polycule, like 10% of the entire world's trans community. But what is this the reason for LGBT Alliance? It's rubbish argument. Oh my God. What are you talking about? I absolutely understand why, like, I mean, you don't need your own dating app, but dating app which does cater specifically to lesbians or specifically to gay men or specifically to straight people or whatever could mean that it can deal with the needs of those groups a bit better. But like some dating apps do cover all of those things. But it's, you know, it's important to be able to sort vaguely by people. You don't, if you're attracted to men, for example, and you are a man, you wouldn't want to just have the pool of all men because most men are straight and that'd be boring waste of your time. So you want to sort by gay men. But like there aren't that many trans people, and like if you're not attracted to them, then you can just say no. And if you are attracted to them, then that's not a problem. So, but either way, I mean, if you wanted to make some fuss about dating apps, then why didn't you make some dating app? Now, here's me replying to Duncan Bannatyne, who used to be on Dragon's Den, which is our version of Shark Tank, claiming that his gyms should have separate but equal spaces for trans people. So I said, why should I be forced into some separate but equal space when I've been using women's spaces for years? There's absolutely no justification for it at all, because there isn't. Then this person says, changing rooms are separated by sex for a reason. Can you tell me why, Monty? They love calling me that because then they get to call me a man's name. and they're offended by calling a trans woman a woman's name because they are critical of gender. The small number of men with dysphoria can use a third space as a courtesy because of that reason. If you get stuck in a room with a pervert, then you can take one for the team. What? So just straight up, they're saying, why have we separated changing rooms? Because of perverts, and I want to put you in the rooms with the perverts, and you can just suffer. And that's your what? It's disgusting. Fuck off. God. The reason that we have separate changing rooms is, amongst other things, to combat misogynistic sexism. But in a world of smartphones and hidden cameras, having open plan changing rooms doesn't seem very private to me. So perhaps we should get rid of open plan changing rooms. Perhaps Duncan Bannatyne could install cubicles in his gyms, and then he would have less issues with perverts if that's something he's got a problem with. And it would make trans people's lives better, and it makes cis people's lives better. Ridiculous. Banning trans people wouldn't make anyone's lives better. Make some people's lives massively worse and wouldn't benefit anyone else. And would cost him more money than just installing cubicles, having third spaces in every single gym, which, like, lots of gyms probably won't even have a trans person there. Ridiculous. The type of genitals you had as a baby are the type of genitals you have for life, regardless of how you might try to reshape them. What? Are you saying you've got a really small dick, mate? But yeah, this person seems to be arguing for genital souls. Like, oh, for sure, you can completely functionally change your genitals from like a penis and testicles into a vagina, vulva, that like you can't tell the difference between a cis woman and a trans woman's one, but it's still a penis somehow. What are you talking about? Everyone's genitals change from when they're a baby. They grow over time. That's something that happens. But also, it's like this is just this magic essences claim that gender critical people always make. They'll say, "Oh, I care about biology," and you say, "Well, what would you actually need to change sex in your mind?" And the answer is nothing. You can't. There is nothing you could change to change sex in a gender critical person's mind, because sex isn't a physical thing for them. It's an essence, and you're born with it, and you cannot change it according to them. Because if chromosomes were sex, then the answer, what do I need to change sex, would be your chromosomes. And they don't say that because they realize that's a nonsense argument. Because if you could change chromosomes today, how would you know if anyone had done it? What happens if I change your chromosomes? Would you suddenly now be a man or suddenly now be a woman? Would you know if I change my chromosomes? Would I even do it? Why would I do it? It doesn't affect your life. Obviously, that's not how we categorize people, and it isn't how we should segregate people. So that's why they don't argue that. So instead, they just deflect around loads. They'll never directly answer the question, what would I need to change sex in your eyes? It's a good question to ask them, because they will absolutely writhe away from it. Or very rarely they slip up and they say something like chromosomes, and then you can just reply with that. Nonsense. Right, we're into the brain rot section now. What are we doing for time? No idea where my phone is. We're doing... Oh! Sorry, everyone. This has not been a good episode for tech. Right, so here someone has randomly replied to Nigella Lawson saying, "Are you sure Nigella is a natural-born woman, born into an Illuminati cult family entity, adrenochrome addict, pedivore, gender reassignment, tradition, sacrifice to Baphomet, hormones, blockers since childhood, surgery, fashion, voice posture coach, demonic entity, 51 likes." So this is a transvestigation. Transvestigation is where you pick random, usually celebrities, cis people, and just declare they're trans and say a load of stuff about them being demons and pick on something. And then it's posted a photo of her where she just looks quite nice. I don't know. But anyway, the reason I've highlighted this, other than the fact that transvestigations are always funny, is that she quote tweeted it and was like, "So now you know, I need to change my bio to demonic entity. Update I have. Next book, how to be a demonic entity." And it is now in their bio. So that was the like boss move to reply to that ridiculous Illuminati adrenochrome. Adrenochrome's a QAnon thing, I think. It's what they think Hillary Clinton gets from drinking baby's blood or something. I don't quite know. Transvestigation is going to merge in with QAnon if it hasn't already, and it's going to bring in some gender critical people. Like, that's going to happen. Here's a good you can always tell. The transgender is like 6 feet tall and completely towers over the normal woman. What the fuck has MMA become? And then it's tagged in Alana Farrell, who is a trans woman who we covered last week. Who is the short one on the right? Standard own. Like, they do this all the time. When you think we can always tell, then they'll pick one thing that they use to tell, like height. And then they'll just decide all tall women are men. And this lady is actually 6 foot. So they were right that she's 6 foot. But wrong about everything else. Standard. Oh, this one's quite grim. I just saw this in passing on Twitter. Post on Mumsnet, someone asking for advice. And they say, "I'm devastated. My husband just said he believes trans women are women and that my gender critical views are abhorrent. He compared it to thinking that all Muslims are terrorists and said that I'm bigoted and transphobic. I'm struggling to see how we go forward from this, to be honest." It's just so depressing that people are ruining their marriages over some ridiculous cult about trying to ban me from the toilet. Like, just stop. Like, you don't have to, like, you don't, when faced with a decision between your marriage and like some hate group on Mumsnet, like, this shouldn't be a competition. Just stop ruining your lives over this. Like, is this decision going to be worth it in 10 years? Like, some people are tearing apart families that have kids over this. And you think that messing up your kids' like childhoods and stuff and ruining your relationships, throwing away your marriage because someone doesn't want to ban me from the toilets? Like, just don't do it. Why are you doing it? For God's sake. Oh, I wasn't sure whether to include this one, and I decided not to, but it looks like I have. So this person says, "Okay, and is this trans genocide? Is it in the room with us right now?" So it's like some reference to like, "Oh, and you think you can see ghosts? Is the ghost in the room with us right now?" Like, sarcastic dig. And then this person has replied, "Not enough genocide." I mean, disgusting. It's the kind of comment that you get every now and then in gender critical space. It's the kind of thing that this does just kind of happen on the internet. Absolutely happens in gender critical spaces, and they always try and pretend that they're the victims of this kind of thing, and it's just important to highlight these. I said these all the time, this kind of thing. But also this like sarcastic comment about trans genocide. I agree that the general population's idea, if you say genocide, they think of gas chambers. They don't think of what the UN definition of genocide is. And I think that it's important to like pick your words carefully here, for sure. But it is also important to highlight what genocide actually is. It's not always just rounding up people in a concentration camp and killing them, because there are much more subtle methods to commit genocide, and knowing the fact that most people think of genocide as this is one very extreme thing means that when like a more sneaky genocide goes on and people start calling it out, the people doing it can say, no, they're being hyperbolic. It's not, obviously not genocide because we're not putting them in concentration camps. But like the UN definition of genocide also includes like moving children of a minority group away and like making them join other groups. And it can involve like taking away the healthcare or sterilizing them or there's like a few things. It's worth looking up the definition just to understand it, because this kind of stuff does happen around the world. And it's important to be aware of it. So when people say gender criticals want like a genocide of trans people, when a group like WHRC says they want a total ban of trans healthcare and to ban trans people from public life, and to like you see gender critical people asking to like lock up all the trans people who are pro trans healthcare for children, or to like take all trans children away from their parents. Like these things do, when they're that extreme, meet the UN definition of genocide. They don't hit all the points. They're absolutely not just committing mass murder, for sure. But I mean, it's not wrong. It's not technically wrong to say you are meeting at least two of the points on this list, which the UN has decided is the definition of genocide. Like, I think it is important not to be hyperbolic. Like, only call out what they're actually doing. Be literal about what they're doing. Don't let them get away with all their dog whistles. If they've signed the thing saying, I want to ban all trans women from all women's spaces, that's what you should say. That would ruin people's lives. That is a fact. That would ban them from public life. That is a fact. You could argue it's a step towards like some kind of attempt to erase all trans people and, do a genocide, but like not really necessary, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, disgusting. Both of them. Fuck off. This person says, in response to that kind of thing, not being able to go to the bathroom of your choice is ruining your life. Well, okay then, maybe you need to gain an ounce of perspective. And it's just like such a selfish dickhead thing to say. So I said, yes, banning me from the spaces I use today would stop me from participating in society. You're supporting people who want to take away my freedoms because they feel uncomfortable with the idea of me, mate. Sort out your own perspective. I can't believe you lot have so little empathy. Do you not stop to think what it would be like if this was targeted at you for even a second? Can you not imagine how terrifying it is? And then their reply is, nice try at emotional manipulation, considering I am a woman and have to put up with being reduced to my genitalia for inclusiveness, and have been told to avert my eyes when some dude wags a penis in front of me. I have a pretty good idea of what being a target is. So the reason I've included this person, who we've got another tweet from in a sec, just gave me this kind of like abuser vibes. Like it reminds me, I was in an abusive relationship for quite a long time, and there's just this thing where they always try and make it about themselves, and they always try and make it out that you're trying to make it about yourself. Like that's a very typical thing, very standard thing, and it's this thing you get a feeling for when you've experienced it for years. You can feel there are certain people who do it, and they do it all the time, and they always are trying to make things about themselves and trying to make it like you're the selfish one. And here, like, we can see, if we just totally just look at the optics, bland, without any context at all, here is me saying, you're trying to ruin my life. Do you know what it's like to be me? And you could say, oh, Katie's being selfish. But here, the context of what is happening is, I want to live my life. And this person is showing up and saying, I want to take away what you do today. I want to stop you living your life. I want to ban you from the things you do today and need to do every day in order to just exist, go to work, go see your friends. Because like no justification given. And then they just don't care. And then they go on this little rant about, oh, I've had to put up with being reduced to my genitalia. Like, that's all you guys ever fucking do to me. It's all you ever talk about is my genitals. But also, like, oh, been told to avert my eyes when some dude wags a penis in front of me. Like, I mean, I doubt that that's happened, because you wouldn't have described it like that if it had. It does, people do flash people. I've had it before. It's a cis man thing to do. But the important thing here is that their defense is, oh, well, I don't want to hurt trans women. I just want to prevent like cis men from being blah. It's like, well, then why won't you address the fact that what you're asking for would ruin the lives of tens of thousands of trans women? It's because you don't care. It's because either you don't care or you want to do that. And it's just so selfish to just turn up and be like, that thing that's been happening my entire life, I want to stop it. It's not going to affect me. It's not going to make my life any safer. And if you complain about it, I'm going to call you selfish. Like, just fuck off. Like, absolutely emotionally abusive, which is, of course, what they instantly try and accuse everyone else of doing. Then they say, Katie expects women to do as she says, no questions asked. And if you don't comply, she hides behind her little group of sycophants to protect her. She argues with hysteria and makes everything about her, and she doesn't give a shit about women, just herself, misogyny. Standard gender critical bullshit. I don't expect anyone to do anything I say, questions asked or not. What I'm saying is, the law already protects me to live my life, and it's what I've been doing my whole life. And you want to stop me from doing that. I, at the very least, expect you to justify that with something and address how much damage that's going to cause to thousands of people's lives. And you won't. What you think I am getting you to comply to is carrying on the way you've lived your life every single day up until now. Like, that's what I want you to comply to. And then, like, hides behind a little group of sycophants. What are you talking about? I walk into gender critical space every single day and argue with dickheads and have, call into my show and talk to me directly. Do whatever. Like, it's just so pathetic. And it's just so, like, this, like, abuser thing where they have to make up that you're, like the abusive person bossing people around, and you want to, like, you're the one. Literally, this is you saying I have to comply, no questions asked, because you've said I want to ban trans women from the spaces they use today, and I'm like, what? Why? What are you going to do about the fact that you've ruined all of our lives? And they're like, oh, you just want to make this about you? No. As Darvo, fuck off, dickhead. And also, as always, expects women to do as she say, no questions asked, when women are the majority of the people who support trans rights, and most women support trans rights, and the majority of people with gender critical views are men. They always have to pretend they're speaking on behalf of all women, because it's part of their little propaganda strategy. No, I won't play this idiotic game. There are two sexes. They're immutable. There are only two roles in reproduction and only two gametes produced. I'll ignore the grammar mess up here. Just want to highlight, they always talk about this roles in reproduction. Lots of people never have a role in reproduction. Lots of people don't want a role in reproduction. Lots of people can't have a role in reproduction. Your role in reproduction isn't the most important thing about you. It's not something that we should be segregating by. It's not something that prejudice segregates by. It kind of does in a lot of ways. Not in this binary way they're talking about. Prejudice actually absolutely selects for, like, people who can get pregnant, and absolutely selects for people who would expect to be able to get pregnant but can't. like cis women who can't get pregnant all the time get a load of misogyny about that. So do trans women, the same stuff often. And as we were talking about earlier, controlling reproductive freedom is like one of the main ways the patriarchy uses to directly try to oppress women. And all the same, like, it's just such a load of nonsense to suggest that we should be segregating by your role in reproduction when, I mean, there aren't only two roles, and that's not how sexism works, and it's just ridiculous. Like, just imagine, like, the claim here is we should be segregating the world by what gametes you have. I mean, for a start, not everyone even has gametes, so that's already going to fail straight off. But then secondly, that isn't how society does work. That isn't how sexism works. It isn't how sexuality works. It's not how society treats you. It's just a weak excuse to try and ban trans people from things because you don't like them. That is it. I wish I had my phone with me. I know we're running out of time. I think we might skip the last few and come back to them because there's only two. Okay, we'll just do this one and then we'll check the time. So, how can dating sites make sure they only register women? And then they say Gala trying, which is a dating site which tries to ban trans women. And this person says they could use an AI that is capable of doing a Turing test. I actually think that should be possible in this particular situation. So a Turing test, an AI, artificial intelligence that can do a Turing test. Turing test means that you cannot distinguish between the AI and a real human. No AIs can pass the Turing test, because if they could, that would be like a huge major breakthrough. And if it could, what would it do to check that there are no trans women? I think if you accidentally created an AI that could pass the Turing test, then that could get on the dating app. And then you wouldn't just have trans women to contend with, you would have AI women to contend with too. Because by definition of the Turing test, you can't tell the difference between them and humans. So, anyway, let's have a look. Oh, right, we do still have 10 minutes. So, I just want to re-highlight again that we had a good week because there was a major court win for trans kids in the UK, and I think that's a good thing to focus on. Sorry, it's a little bit rushed at the end there. There was a lot to go through, and I hope that you enjoyed the show. I do have a few PO Box things that I was going to open last episode and I forgot, and if I forget again this week, then they're just going to keep stacking up, and I promise people that I will open them. So thank you very much for watching. If you would like to stick around, I have just a couple of things to open. And if you would like to send me anything, my PO Box address is in the description. So let's have a look and see what we have. The first thing is a postcard. Oh, it did go into focus. Cool. Dublin College. And it does say, please do not read this out on camera. So I'm not going to, but I have read it. Congratulations. So the next thing is this, which it says something on it. It's like biscuiteers. I really hope this is biscuits. So let's see. Oh, if it's not biscuits, I won't be disappointed. It's a tin. It's a nice little tin of something with a green cross on the front. That's why it's invisible. Ooh, this is fancy. I don't want to tear the paper. Please be biscuits. Oh, it smells like chocolate. Ooh, What is this? I hope you're feeling better. Oh, it's like little medicine things. Check this out. It's got like, I guess that's like some cream and like some pills and like a thing here. It's full of like some scissors. And then the next layer down has syrup and a needle injection thing. And come on, focus. And like cream. But these are all like biscuits, like cookies or something. The next one down. Oh, another piece has fallen off. There's another pill. Like a bouquet of flowers, a plaster. This is really cool. Thank you. I've never seen such arty stuff. I'll take a photo of them all before I eat them all, and put them on Twitter. It's really interesting. I've never seen anything like this. Thank you. An interesting gift. I'm very it's exciting seeing what people get. And we've also got this one. So let's see this. I think that's all the ones I've got. So there's just a couple. Thank you very much. Oh gosh, what's this? Loads of stuff. So this is some bubble wrap. Looks like an anime called Your Name by Makoto Shinkai. Cool. Mitsuha and Taki have never met, but when the frustrated country girl wishes of a life in the big city, they will forge a connection both unexplainable and unforgettable. In their dreams, the two swap lives, cultures, and genders as they learn more about and grow closer to each other. What was once a shock becomes a joy-filled double life, but what will happen when they discover the red string of fate tying them together? Oh, so it's like a gender swap anime. Cool. Thank you. And then there's two more things. There's Ghost in the Shell, which I have heard of. So that's cool. And also Birthday Wonderland. I have not heard of this. Collector's edition. Wow. So it's got like a little booklet thing. Oh. It's got like artwork in it and stuff. I went to like a manga and anime drawing museum exhibition thing in Tokyo once. And it was really cool. Apart from one thing. So we went into this like as like an anime and manga thing. I don't really know. And I went in with my brother and like we looked around some different things, and then there was like a special exhibit on, like just for that day or that week or whatever. And we walked into it, and once you walked in, you had to go through the whole thing, and it was like the zigzag, and you had to go through all this stuff. And we walked in, and we're like, oh, let's see what it is, because obviously it's all written Japanese. And it was like a special exhibition on how to draw like upskirt shots. And we walked in and we're like, oh, that one's a bit like, oh, ooh, that one, oh, and then like looked around and just, it was kind of like, it wasn't just, but it was like, there was a lot of that kind of thing and like drawing people's bums and stuff. And we were like, should we just go quickly through it? Just like gunned it through and then got out the other side and we're like, oh, let's just go for lunch. But anyway, I'm sure this is not going to get that in. And then it's also got this cool artwork. And then I've got a lovely note as well. Gosh, there's loads of stuff here. Thank you very much. Let's just have a quick look. Oh, so I'll read it later. But it's got a cool trans rights pin and it's got a cool butterfly pin. Thank you very much. That's really kind. I'll have to watch those. Let me know if you think they're cool films or whatever, if you've seen them. This sounds really exciting. But anyway, thank you very much, everyone. I'm really honoured that people send me stuff. It's all just really cool. Yeah, I will see you next week for episode 17. And there will be no tech issues. Yes. Bye.